Biology chapter 17 theory video 4 we are going to discuss natural selection. Now all the living organisms they have a reproductive potential. That means they can reproduce and increase their population. Some species have a better rate of population increase because they can reproduce at a young age. Then they can produce they can reproduce reproduce at a young age, and they can reproduce several times a year, and also they can produce several young offspring at any one given time. Now, usually human beings they take 9 months to reproduce, and they usually produce just one. But if you take mice or rabbit, they can reproduce a large number of they can produce a large number of offsprings, and also they can reproduce many times a year. So as a result, if they are unchecked, if there is no other factor to check their rate at which they reproduce, then their numbers will increase exponentially. But now for example, rabbits are introduced to Australia where they are not endemic. So from England they were brought to Australia and they were introduced to the wild. So what happened was they started off with 12 pairs of rabbits, and it increased to millions within a very short period of time, because rabbits are not in the order of natural predation in Australia. So there are no natural predators, and there were only few predators. So as a result, the rabbits number increased exponentially, and this resulted in the sheep and cows not having enough food to eat, enough grass to eat, because the grass was all eaten by this rabbit. And because Australia is almost a grass, it's almost a desert. It's a big desert. So as a result, the food is not in abundance. So what happened was the environment started to limit their numbers as well. But this does not happen overnight. It takes some time for the environment to act against it. So then there are we call these environmental factors that come into play to keep the rabbit numbers in check. These could be biotic factors. That means it would be caused by other living organisms, for example, predation by different kinds of animals, or competition for food. The cows and sheep and rabbits would compete for food, or else the different infection caused by pathogens, or else it could be abiotic factors, such as limiting factors by the non-living component of the nature. For example, water supply or nutrient levels in the soil. That will, the nutrient level in the soil will affect the amount of grass that is available. So that in turn will decide whether these animals have enough food to eat. Now what happens is, when high numbers of rabbits start eating the vegetation, there would be food scarcity that would be generated. As a result, they will start to die off. Then at the same time, the number of increasing rabbits will increase the number of predators as well, because there is food is in abundance. So the foxes or stoats or weasels, they will also increase in their number. But once again, the overcrowding will result in the diseases to spread easily, and lack of food will create starvation, and animals will die. So these kind of reasons. Now, for example, in this particular case, the disease known as myxomatosis resulted and much of the population died off, and also because they are very close to each other, these viruses that transmit this disease and you know uh, the viruses that is transmitted by the fleas actually got easily transferred because they are very close to each other, because they are living in packed conditions because there are too many rabbits. So this results in the reduction of the rate of the growth of rabbit population. So many died because of the lack of food. Then others died by predations, or then others died from myxomatosis, and only a few uh, animals survived until they were young, or they were old enough to uh, old enough to reproduce. So the uh, only very few survived. As a result, the population growth would slowed down, and it came to a constant level, which is bearable by the environment. But this does not happen overnight, so there would be other repercussions as well. So those have to be taken into consideration. However, what we need to understand is the nature usually takes a pathway that would limit the overpopulation. So now, when we consider human population, also from time to time, nature takes different avenues to check the population, because the world's human population is increasing rapidly and exponentially. So this will be taken. Some environmental course will come along, which will reduce the number. Uh, so the keywords that we have to learn from here is the environmental factors, that is a feature of the environment of an organism that affects its survival. Then biotic factor, an environmental factor that is caused by living organisms, for example predation or competition. Then competition is the need for a resource by two organisms when that resource is in short supply. Then abiotic factors are the environmental factor that is caused by non-living components, soil pH, light intensity, presence of water, etc. Right? I hope you understood. Let's write down a note on this. Natural selection. All living organisms have the reproductive potential to increase their population at different rates. Different factors come together to determine the survival of a species. These factors are known as environmental factors. Environmental factors are of two kinds: biotic factors and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are the environmental factors that are caused by living organisms, example predation or competition. Abiotic factors are the environmental factors that are caused by non-living components, example soil pH, light intensity, presence of water. There is a competition for food or light between organisms, this keeps the numbers in check. Right. Now, moving on, we have to learn, we are going to learn about selection pressures and survival. So, what is going to determine who is going to live and who is going to die? So this could be, just, we might say that it is luck, but it is not exactly luck by itself. But it actually depends on different features that gives them an advantage for in their struggle for existence. So you must have heard about the theory called survival of the fittest. Now, when you take these rabbits, so they had they were mostly of two colors. One is the normal color, the brown agouti color. Then there were a few white homozygous for the recessive allele, which was white. So these white fellows, now in the brown background in Australia, in the desert areas, these white rabbits did not actually have a stand. They didn't stand a chance against the predators, and these predators included humans as well. So they were easily seen, and the foxes and whoever the other animals who were there, they could easily catch them and eat them. So the numbers of the white rabbits declined very much, and the agouti rabbits, they actually they have the genetic advantage to survive because of their brown color, because they are not very distinct from the environment. So as a result, there is a better chance for them to survive. So they have a better chance at reproducing, and there is a better chance of their numbers increasing. Then in the meantime, the number of white rabbits, they decline in number, and sometimes they can even be completely removed from the environment, because they might die off because they don't have the chance of reproducing. Their chances of reproduction reduces because their numbers decline, and as a result they might completely disappear. Then we talk about the term called fitness. So that is the extent to which organisms are adapted to their environment. So that is fitness. So that is the capacity of an organism to survive and transmit the alleles to its offspring. So that means the agouti or the brown rabbits had a better fitness than the white rabbits. Then now this predation by foxes in this particular example, that is an example for something called the selection pressure. So that means selection pressure increases the chances of alleles or better alleles or more suitable alleles, so alleles which causes fitness to increase, to be passed on to the next generation, while reducing or decreasing the chances of others from being transmitted to the next generation. So that means if they had at least one allele for agouti coat, they would have a selective advantage of reproducing better reproduction, and as a result they will survive. But the white population will be very rare, or they might completely die off, because this doesn't happen overnight. This again happens over many generations, so they might die off. So the effect of this selection pressure on the frequency of alleles in a population is called natural selection. So natural selection increases the frequency of alleles that brings about an advantage to increase, and reduces the frequency of alleles that brings about a disadvantage. So those are the details that we have learned so far. So let's look at these keywords. So these keywords are the definitions that you need to remember. Fitness is the ability of an organism to survive and reproduce. Then selection pressure is the environmental factor that affects the chance of survival of an organism. Organisms with one phenotype are more likely to survive and reproduce than those with a different phenotype. So that is, different phenotype means phenotype which does not produce a factor that increases its fitness, but rather decreases its fitness. For example, in this particular situation, having a white fur color was a disadvantage, and it reduces their fitness. Then natural selection is the process by which individuals with a particular set of alleles are more likely to survive and reproduce than those with other alleles. Over time, with many generations, the advantageous alleles become more frequent in the population. Let's write down a note on this. The organisms having alleles more suitable, having alleles which produce characteristics more suitable to their environment, have a better chance of survival than the organisms who produce characteristics that are not suitable for its survival, for their survival. This is referred to as fitness, which can be defined as the capacity of an organism to survive and transmit its alleles to its offspring, that is, to reproduce. The environmental factors that affects the chance of survival of an organism is known as selection pressure. For example, predation of organisms which cannot blend well into the environment are more likely to fall prey to predators. This is selection pressure, and this results in one phenotype, organisms with one phenotype being able to survive better than organisms with different phenotype. Then leave a line. I write the process by which individuals with a particular set of alleles being more likely to survive and reproduce than those with other alleles is referred to as natural selection, and as a result, these alleles become more frequent in the population over the generations. I hope you understood. If you did not understand, please ask me questions. If you understood, please go to question number 3.